This is Jeannie Ortega with Breathecast.com, and I'm here with the Burpo family, whose son's miraculous story changed their lives forever. Todd, can you explain to us what that story was and how it's impacted your life?
Sure. In 2003, my son almost died of an appendicitis. He had emergency surgery. And during that surgery, when we were seeing our son, slip away from us, he found himself sitting on Jesus' lap. Then Jesus had angels fly him to heaven. He can tell us what we were doing while he was in surgery. He met family members. God can describe heaven and what he experienced.
Yeah, I read that he met with a child that you guys had lost, miscarried, and a grandpa.
Yes.
And so those are the stories that you absolutely, when you were shocked when you heard that.
Well, it's one of those things that a kid cannot invent. A lot of people will say drugs and chemicals kind of play with people's brains in near-death experiences. Mm-hmm. It can't invent information, not to mention information like that he never knew and people he weren't aware of. He can talk about what I did with my grandfather when I was a little boy.
Wow. So, Colton, I want to ask you, how vivid were these, this vision or this trip that you went on? Was it as clear as you and I right here?
Yes, it was just as clear, but it's been 11 years since the experience, so some memories have faded, some are a little harder to remember, but I can still remember quite a few things.
And you penned a New York Times best-selling book on this. Does that help you just kind of keep it in your memory and keep it dear to you? Because you're saying now it's like so far gone.
Well, just being able to talk about it, it does help re-spark the memory because I have to tell people about it.
Yeah. And Sonia, I want to ask you, this story has been inspiring people everywhere. How does that feel?
Well, it's good. We thought we could help out a couple of people, but we have helped out more than we ever imagined, and God has really touched the story and taken it to other countries too.
That's awesome. And now the story is a movie. It looks incredible, and so many people are lining up already to get their tickets to see this movie. Heaven is for real. So Hollywood covered your story. Are there any parts in the movie that per se, in the memory, it wasn't covered by the movie?
Well, I think, there's lots of things about heaven, like God's throne room, the Trinity. Those are some pretty complicated concepts. So they don't go into there too much. And I think even like Colton says, no one down here can depict heaven as beautiful as it truly is. But at the same time, our day-to-day life and the conversations we had, the pushback from people, the acceptance from people. Matter of fact, I think in the movie you'll find out what small-town life is like. And they do. This movie's good. I've seen audiences laugh, cry, cheer during it. So it's done very well.
That's great. And that's actually what I was going to ask you, Colton. Do you think that this movie portrayed your memory well?
Well, it's kind of hard to portray something that you've never experienced before. So I will say that for never seeing or experiencing heaven before, I think they did a really good job.
That's wonderful. So what advice or what can you offer someone who's a skeptic, who's just like, I don't know, he was a kid and talking about heaven. Like, what can you say to that person to help them understand that your story is real, and you guys have gone through this as a family?
Well, I think there's a couple things. One, a 4-year-old cannot invent memories. I think sometimes you can look at a 14-year-old and go, well, maybe they can come up with this, but not a 4-year-old. And I think if a person looks even at small-town life, I think the movie is going to show them that there's no way we could make something like this up in a small town. Colton's been talking about heaven now for 11 years, and everyone in Imperial knows that. And for people that say, well, I just don't know about this, we got 2,000 witnesses that have been on this journey with us now for 11 years.
That's wonderful. That's great. And Colton, I have to ask you, how does heaven look? If you can, I know it's been a long time from now, but how if you could help us to know, we all want to know. It's what we want,
Well, it is difficult to describe because there's not really anything down here on Earth to describe it with. But a pretty good way to describe it is it's a lot like Earth in many ways. It's the perfect Earth. There's no sin. So there's animals, people, angels, trees, water, grass, pretty much almost everything we have down here on Earth.
I'm so glad that there's animals. I can't wait to see my puppy up there. So Sonia, I want to ask you, how do you protect your child from all this attention? I know it's been a media frenzy, and you get the skeptics and you get those that support you. How do you protect your child?
Well, we live in the same house we've lived in since he's been born. And he goes to regular school. I make sure he participates in a show choir and all his school events, and he's got lots of work to make up from being gone right now. And he has to wash his own laundry. He has to take out the trash, and he's got to take driver's ed this summer. So I'm trying to make sure 2 weeks are kept out of the schedule so he can take driver's ed.
That's awesome. That's good. It's good to stay just in the real stuff that's going on in the midst of all the attention. So one last question. Why do you think God entrusted you as a family to spread this message of heaven is for real?
Well, I don't know why he probably picked us, but I can say I know why he picked a child. I think when Colton speaks about heaven with that childlike faith that Christ says, that's the type of faith I'm looking for. That's where people go, wow, because a child accepts things with that openness that God wants. But I think another thing, too, now God knew that when a child talks about heaven, adults listen. In the book and in the movie, you see this child telling us adults, let me sit down and explain to you what I saw. And I think people realize a child is pure. They're not contaminated with agendas or other things like that. And so people realize probably their best witness is going to be a kid. And then on top of that, for some reason, God allowed Colton to remember a lot of amazing details, not just a bright light or a tunnel or whatever. He remembered some really cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you guys, the Burpo family. Your story has inspired us, and it's inspiring to see that it's hitting theaters and it's going to spread the message. So we want to thank you on behalf of Breathecast. I'm Jeannie Ortega.
Thank you.